Instead of trying to change the white man in your mind, make you accept us, we change the mind of the black man and make him accept himself. And as soon as he accepts himself, he'll solve his own problem. He won't be trying to force himself into your factory and into your bedroom and into your kitchen.
With no education, you have neo-colonialism instead of colonialism, like you got in Africa 9, like you got in Haiti. So what we're talking about is there has to be education program. That's very important. As a matter of fact, we so important for us that a person has to go through 6 weeks of our political education before he can consider himself a member of the party, able to even run down ideology for the party. Why? Because if they don't have the education, then they're nowhere. You dig what I'm saying? They're nowhere because they don't even know why they're doing what they're doing. You might get people caught up in the emotionless movement. You understand me? You might get them caught up in because they're poor and they want something. And then if they're not educated, they want more. And before you know it, they'll be chaplets. And before you know it, we have Negro imperialists.
Peace and Black Power family. It's your Harlem educator, author, and activist, the Black Liberation Coach, Brother Agyei Tyehimba. I just want to take a few moments to welcome you to Harlem Liberation School's YouTube channel. Harlem Liberation School was started in 2016 by myself and my queen. And we basically saw that there was a lack of foundational black political education going on in Harlem. We're not going to get up from under white supremacy without knowing how oppression works, how it affects and impacts in our community, the ways in which we internalize our own oppression and engage in self-defeating behavior and thinking, and our socio-political movements and our very important individuals and organizations throughout our history who played a leading role in fighting against and resisting and disrupting white supremacy. So Harlem Liberation School was founded as a black political education center for adults. Because education is not just relegated to children. Adults need education. It's those of us adults who maybe when we were kids did not get that foundational Africana studies of black political education. The things we need to know to be free and to fight effectively for our liberation. And so that's what we're here to do. We hope that you will come through, check us out, look at our videos, like them, comment on them, and share them. Peace and Black Power. Peace and Black Power families. Brother Agyei from Harlem Liberation School, where we teach black people to wake up, clean up, and stand up. Let me turn this off for a minute. All this extra noise. Family, thank you for joining us for this Black Power sermon. And the title is essentially, or the topic is, if an idea or practice harms us, we should reject it. I think that's pretty simple. And I think most people would agree with that. I think the problem occurs when we're following a rigid ideology, right? Or we have a we're supporting an idea or practice that may not be good for our community, but for some reason it's self-serving. It helps us in some weird reason, right? For some weird reason. So I want us to just kind of deconstruct this for a minute. I'm gonna try to put up a graphic. We're going to look at this because I think the graphic says it all. Hopefully everyone should see this. And it's a graphic that Harlem Liberation School made some time ago. And it reads, I'm going to read it just in case you can't see it, but it reads, ideology exists to provide a framework for understanding the world we occupy, how to shape it in our image and interests, and tools to use in doing so. It is supposed to provide clarity, direction, and purpose. It should guide, not impose. It should liberate, not enslave or encumber. It should promote truth, not illusions. And we can add to that lies or illusions. It should lead to success, not failure. It should unify, not divide. When it fails to do these things, it becomes yet another tool of confusion and oppression. I think that this provides the basic foundation for what I'm going to talk about just off the head, no notes, for our Black Power sermon. We black folk new Africans that exist in this world are going to forever hear ideas or practices promoted to us by outsiders and by people within our community. These practices will refer to our resources, our money, how we spend our money. It will refer to this idea of work or work ethic. It will refer to this idea of physical and mental health, ideas of heaven, hell, or some afterlife after we die, whatever you want to call it. People are always pushing their ideas to the Black community because the Black community has a sizable amount of money in a consumer way that we spend on goods and services. Because the Black community has labor that people want to utilize and use and exploit, and because the Black community has other resources like our beautiful creativity, for one, right? Like our hip hop music, being that we're in the 50th anniversary of hip hop. I want you to think about how hip hop started, where it started, the type of people that started it, who controlled it in 1974 or 5, and I want you to look at the people who control it now. And what type of people are they? And what is their income level like? And you'll see the vast difference and disparity. We were brought to this country against our will, under the auspices of making colonies. First, the British nation, which of course, had the 13 colonies which fought for independence and became the United States of America. And then once becoming the United States of America, those white folk that fought for their freedom enslaved us. Ain't that a bitch? Enslaved us while fighting for their freedom, while writing beautiful documents like the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution and the preamble to the Constitution, talking about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and yet they're enslaving us. Some of the writers of the writer of the Declaration of Independence, and some of those who signed the Constitution, and some of those who signed the Declaration of Independence were slave owners. The first president of this country was a slave owner. Family, can you all hear me? Okay, I just want to make sure. So we were brought here under the auspices from mostly West African countries, civilizations, under the auspices of helping white people build their nations, build their societies, right? So we have at least 8 or 9 colonial powers who were mother countries, and we were their colonies, kind of like a pimp hoe scenario, right? Where the hoe metaphorically does all of the work, the labor. The pimp provides minimal labor at all and collects all of the hoe's money, fam. And parcels out, the pimp decides to parcel out what he or she decides to give. But it's clearly an unfair power dynamic going on where the pimp has 90% of the power or more. Right? So people are always trying to come to us with ideas because people know that Black people will take an idea and will run with it. They know that we are brand loyal. We have families where 3 generations, the only laundry detergent they used was Tide. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? We have Black communities where the only tissue, there's a certain type of tissue, toilet tissue they use, or a certain type of hot dog they bought. So I think y'all know what I'm talking about. People know this about us because people study us, family. They don't go on anecdotes and old wise tales and rumor and innuendo. They study. There's reports they do. There's a whole video you can watch on YouTube talking about how to sell products to the Negro. They study us, family. They do surveys. They observe us. They do surveillance. They keep track of the products we buy. This is one of the reasons Amazon is so rich, because Amazon tracks what they call metadata. They see what pages you go to, what products you buy, how often you buy. Do you have repeat purchases? How long do you stay on each page? They have all of that data, family. And based on that data, they can either sell that to other businesses, so those businesses know how to target campaigns to get you to buy their products, or they can change the things that appear on your page when you're watching it that will likely lead to you making purchases yourself, right? The information they get about us. So because we are colonized people and because we live in a territory that we don't own, regulate, where we don't have sovereignty, we're not self-governing, the rules we follow we didn't put there, right? Other people did. Then we have to be on alert at all times. And we have to maintain a healthy level of suspicion, not paranoia. Paranoia implies an unhealthy level of suspicion, right? We're talking about a healthy level where you're a colonized people. This country has been involved in engaging in surgeries and medical procedures that were unethical concerning us. This country has conspired to exploit our labor through sharecropping and enslavement. This country wrote a law, the 13th Amendment, supposedly to end chattel slavery formally, but then created a new form of enslavement called incarceration. And then as soon as they signed that 13th Amendment, they start building prisons all over the country, family. So job discrimination, all types of things, family. So we have a right, in fact, we have a responsibility if we are intelligent to maintain a healthy suspicion about this government. That's just what it is, right? It would only be an unhealthy suspicion if the government was was loving and courteous and accommodating to us, but we know that's not the case. We know that's not the case. We even people that we thought were for us that weren't black turned out in many cases to betray us. So if you take a John F. Kennedy, there was a time, family, if you grew up, if you're around the age I am, and you went to the average black home, they had pictures of Jesus, who was white, Martin Luther King, and John F. Kennedy. I mean, maybe Abraham Lincoln, right? The so-called liberators, the white liberators of black folk. And we didn't know that John F. Kennedy, as president of the United States, and his brother Robert Kennedy, uh, the attorney general who later was running to be the president of the United States before he was assassinated like his brother, conspired to to give the FBI the permission to wiretap and bug people like Martin Luther King, all over, wherever he went, all over the country, in his hotel rooms, in his home, to find something they could use to either blackmail him or embarrass him and discredit him. And these were the ones that we thought were good. So we're not even going to talk about the white folk that we knew were blatant and overt racists and white supremacists, right? So this is the context. I'm giving you the context. So we should have a healthy suspicion. When people come to us with bright ideas, we should take a moment because there are questions we have to ask. And one of those questions, I think, is some of those questions are right here in this graphic, right? So it's like, okay, will this idea or practice lead our people to be possessive, imposing, and oppressive with one another? If so, then we should reject the idea. We shouldn't practice that idea, right? Will this practice or idea enslave us to each other or someone else? Will it make us dependent on an outside entity? Will it make us more vulnerable than we already are to another entity? Is it based on lies, illusions, and anecdotes, or is it based on truth? Right? If it's based on lies and illusions, we should reject it. If it's based on truth and maybe uses metaphors or allegory to teach us the truth, well, that's different. Mythology designed to teach us to reach a higher truth, that's different. But if it's selling us illusions and lies designed to take our money and to take our political solidarity and divide it and exploit us for our votes and our money or whatever, we should reject it outright.
We should ask when people come with bright ideas for our community, whether they white, black, whoever they are, and they're on social media, they're writing a book, they're a professor, whatever they are, and they're advocating something we should do, think, or practice. Does it unify our people? If we take this idea or we begin practicing this action or behavior, will it lead to us being unified, or will it cause division? Will it exacerbate the already existing division in our community? These are intelligent questions, and we should ask these questions, and politicians will also come with ideas, right? Okay, politicians will come with certain ideas. So let me just finish, and we're going to give some examples of how we could apply this. Will this idea or practice that this black man or woman, this white man or woman, or whatever man or woman is trying to get us to uh, agree with and participate in, will it increase our resources like our money, our income, our assets, or will it give us more liabilities? Will it put us into debt? Will it make us economically, financially dependent and enslaved to somebody else? Logical question that we should ask before we follow someone's advice or bright ideas. These Some of these ideas what I'm getting to is that some of these ideas promoted to us are deliberately exploitative. Bad ideas will lead us to increased poverty, increased division, increased infighting, and increased vulnerability. Some of these ideas that people are promoting to us, they honestly believe are good for us, but they're still wrong-headed. Just because somebody believes in an idea and doesn't mean to hurt you doesn't mean that their idea is not harmful. So we still have to approach things. This is not about, who's enemy, who's a friend. Is the idea valid? Is this behavior they're promoting valid for us? And you will never, there'll be times where you think something is and it isn't, or you think it isn't and it is. We'll make missteps, we'll make misjudgments. But based on what we know, and our research at the time, we should be able to say, based on what we've discovered, based on its likely impact, its anticipated impact on our community, we reject this idea. Or we willingly accept this idea and this practice, and we need to get started ASAP, depending. Now, let me get out of that for a minute, and let us get back so you can see me in the screen completely. So now the question becomes, let's say somebody's coming to your community. Let's say this person's on social media. Let's say this person dresses really nice, has nice watches, nice shoes, seems to have a sense of taste, sense of class, at least according to the white man's definition. And he's says that he's a relationship expert. And he's going around and he got women calling and he's saying things to black women that are insulting, mean-spirited, embarrassing, and humiliating. He's essentially making them it seems like he's trying to make them feel like they're less than, that they're not worthy of love, that they have to jump through all these different hoops to attract a good man who will value them. You have to ask yourself, forget how good he looks, forget how strong he speaks, forget his ability to articulate. If we take his ideas, what he's suggesting to the sisters, what he's suggesting to black men about how we evaluate sisters, the criteria we should use in determining if a sister is worth our time and our love. If we take his model of behavior, if we take his ideas and use them in our community, will it help our male-female relationships? Or will it add to the already existing confusion and division of our black male-female relationships? Will it help women to feel empowered and secure and confident and loving with black men? Or will it cause or add to distrust and suspicion and thinking the worst of each other? Will it cause us to be responsible in our analysis of our relationships and honest and transparent and come to be able to say, well, we as black women or a segment of black women, these are some things that we struggle with and we need to improve. We as black men or segments of black men, these are things we struggle with and we need to improve. And let's work together to come up with solutions that mutually benefit us. Or will it cause a tit for tat? Well, I'll stop when you stop. I'll stop blaming you when you stop blaming me. A childish, immature sort of discussion that leads nowhere except to more divisiveness. And if once we make the determination, then we have to be courageous enough to say, this is not good for our people. Now, will people listen to us? Maybe, maybe not. But we have the right and responsibility, if we care for our community, say what this brother's kicking, that's not good for us. We could see what that's doing already, and if it continues, it's going to be worse. It causes more problems than solving anything. We have to reject that, right? That's an example of how we apply what I'm saying, right? Um, Brother David Bailey, I want to thank you. He says, "My brother, may God Almighty love, peace, and continued blessings be upon you and the family." Quoting from Proverbs 27:17. Thank you, sir, and same to you, good brother. Thank you. All right. So these are the types of things we're talking about. Somebody comes with this supposedly good, bright idea for the black community, right? Another thing you want to ask, and this is especially true if they're outside of our community, a white person, like, it could be a Latino, it could be anybody, right? What they're advocating to our community and trying to promote for us to do, are they doing it? Are they doing what they're promoting for us to do? That's a good way to look at it too. Because the presumption here is, if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. So I've never heard people in the white community, uh, uh, not to my knowledge, suggest things that will hurt their community, that will dilute the power of their community, that will lead their children to be miseducated and confused and not know how to navigate in society. In fact, if white people think, as by and large, this is not all white people, but if white people by and large suspect that an ideal or practice is going to harm their community, harm their children, make their communities vulnerable or poor, they reject it. And they will go all out teaching against the practice. Case in point, even when it's wrong headed, even when they're wrong. So case in point, this guy, DeSantos, I believe in Florida, he's going around banging on what he thinks is critical race theory, and he's saying that we should ban it in the public schools, and we should not teach anything that makes any group of people feel like historically like we're blaming them for something they did in the past, or makes them feel uncomfortable. Listen, this is history. We got to teach the history right. This is what happened. Native Americans were almost completely decimated, and it wasn't Africans that completely decimated them almost. It was white people. And it was white people from certain countries who did it for certain political and economic interests. That's a fact. Right? Now, whether some white kid today is sitting in fifth grade class and he's going home, he's saying, Mom, the teacher, Mr. T, he said that, the European nations were colonized, and that made me feel bad. Well, you feel bad, white boy, because that's what it is. That's what it is. Right? Okay. Now, what DeSantos probably doesn't know, and the people that follow him, they think that he's advocating something that's going to protect white people from attack, from critique, historical, political critique of the unrighteous and dirty and unethical and brutal things they did to our people in the past and are still doing. But the truth is, critical race theory isn't even taught in grammar school. Critical race theory is taught at the collegiate level, fam. So it doesn't even apply. And critical race theory is not talking about blaming people. It's what critical race theory is trying to answer is, after all the civil rights movement and black power movement and protests, and after all the legislation that was supposedly designed to help us, we still are the victims of discrimination and exploitation. There are still places in the society that are that we are barred from entering. There are barriers to these places. So why haven't all these efforts worked? And in trying to answer those questions, civil rights lawyers primarily and legal scholars theorize, okay, this must mean racism is more permanent than it is temporary. This must mean that simple band-aids on little cuts in a society doesn't work. That the country at its root is fundamentally flawed and racist. It is fundamentally vulgar and brutal to our people. So all of these institutions are complicit with that. They've all participated in that, and they still are participating in that. And 50 years from now, the descendants of those people that did it 20 years ago are going to be doing it 20 years later, that they're deriving power and benefits from it. That's why they do it. That's why they'll continue to do it. And no moral appeal, no can't we all get along is going to work for them, because it's not moral for them. For them, it's about power and resources and assets and privilege. And that people historically don't just willingly give up their privilege, right? So that's what critical race theory is really about. But the point is, even though white people that are trying to challenge it, trying to ban black history in schools, trying to tell you in public schools, you pay tax dollars, right? But your kid can't go to school and learn about his history. He's learning about American history, but he's not learning much about the role that his ancestors played in this country and the world. If, so that's hurting black people in the black community. We're going through all these grades of school and not learning about who you are, but you're learning about the so-called greatness of other people. That's demoralizing, family. And it sets you up to be victimized politically when you don't know the background of this country, how this country got started, who was responsible for laying down the laws, what they were thinking about when they wrote that Constitution, who they were thinking about. So, for instance, black people who support the Second Amendment, as we should, we have the right to protect ourselves. We think, some of us think the Second Amendment was for all citizens, and we're citizens, so it's for us. Wrong. The Second Amendment was a concession made by the framers of the Constitution, the so-called white founding fathers, right? Because they were the Southern states representatives were concerned about slave insurrections and revolts, family. So the Second Amendment were the Southerners saying, we want the right to have guns, to have militias, to protect our people in these different locations against enslaved Africans rising up for their freedom and using arms to come against us. That's where the Second Amendment comes from. It doesn't come from just this idea we need to protect ourselves from some invisible theoretical enemy. We were the enemy, family. That's where the Second Amendment comes from, right? Or some people think that cops are innocent and innocuous, that they don't have political agendas, that they are truly here to serve and protect citizens, and don't know the history of police departments, of police, that they are, today's police are the modern day offspring of slave patrols. White men with shotguns, riding horses, with badges that went around and protected plantations. Who? The enslaved people in the hell no. They wasn't protecting our ancestors. They were protecting the slave master on the plantation. From us, what were they protecting? White people and their property. Physical property, not us in this case, because we were technically their property too. And the police are their descendants. So if you don't have this political education, you'll be likely to support different ideas. Let me give an example of how this plays out. How you're supposed to maturely and intelligently decide, should we support this idea in practice or should we not? Let's say, family, that you got black people in the hoods of America and the rural areas of America that followed the lesson of the Black Panther Party, the Republic of New Africa, the Revolutionary Action Movement, and the Black Liberation Army. And they said, and Brother Malcolm, we have the right to defend ourselves. And in this country where we're getting killed seemingly every day, we definitely are going to exercise our right to protect ourselves. We're not trying to bother nobody. We're not trying to bully nobody, but we got the right to protect our babies, our men, women, and our elders in our community, right? So the white man notices, wow, because they have records. These gun stores have records. They keep records of who's buying. Sometimes they do demographical surveys if you consent to doing that. Gun stores, some gun shows tend to be a lot more lenient, but the gun stores have records of who's buying. You got to show your license and your ID so they can see who's black, who's what. Okay, and they see, wow, black people in all these communities, gun purchases are going up quickly, right? Let's say that's what the government sees, or the store owners, the white gun store owners. Now, all of a sudden, your church, you find out they announce in your Sunday sermon, yes, brothers and sisters, as they go through their list of announcements, Sister Shirley's in the hospital. As you know, she unfortunately has diabetes. Please visit her at X hospital at X street at X time at X phone number. And then they go to the next day. We're proud to announce that we're so-and-so Baptist Church is in a relationship with our local police department. That right there is a little bit disturbing, because the police department they're in a relationship is most likely guilty of killing some of the congregants in that church or their family members, or harassing them for sure. Okay, but anyway, so you're listening in the church to this. What's this relationship with our church and this police precinct? Oh, what we're going to do to keep our communities safe from all the guns is we're going to have a gun buyback program. And so our church, we're going to host it here. The police from the whatever precinct going to be here in the church. We're going to set up tables. And what you do is you bring all your guns, even illegal guns, even guns that have bodies on them. Bring all your guns. And in return for you bringing your guns, we're going to give you $200, usually in a gift card format. And they'll give you maybe up to $600. So you can bring 3 guns in. Each person can bring 3 guns in. So you notice everybody in the community that day of that gun buyback or that 3-day gun buyback program, thousands of black people are coming out with guns that they own, some of which have bodies on them. And they tell you, even if some of these were used to kill somebody or rob somebody or whatever, we won't we won't punish you. We're gonna accept all guns as long as they work, and don't worry about anything. Won't punish you. Now, you're a leader in this community. You're noticing this trend, what's going on. How should you help our community analyze if it's a good idea to support the gun buyback program? What are some very good questions you should ask? Well, one of them should be, can we trust them? Not your church, but the police department. Can we trust the police? What has been our relationship with the police in our community? When we go to their meetings and they say these meetings are for us to air our differences, and we raise our hand and air a difference, how is that grievance responded to? How is it received? Do they cut people off and say, man, we can't answer that? You know, you take it too long. Do they dismiss it? If they listen to it, do we see them create programs or initiatives or change their behavior to respond to our grievances? Or do they continue doing what they're doing? Can we trust the police? That's a good question. Then we got to think about the experiences we've had in our communities with police, the experiences our family members have had with police, our loved ones have had with police, our children have had with police. Don't we hear stories of women saying that they've been sexually harassed by police? Don't we hear stories of the drug dealers in our communities telling us that they pay police to ignore their illegal activity or to give them intelligence or information about rival drug dealers? Don't we know that's a fact? There's plenty of documents about it. Watch the movie Serpico. Start there. Read Serpico's book, Frank Serpico. He was a cop. He refused to take money. He exposed corruption in the police department, and the police tried to kill him. That man had to leave the country for years. Right? Okay. First question: can we trust the police? If we determine we can't trust the police, can we trust what they say when they tell us, "Bring your gun back. We'll give you $200," and we don't care, even if it has murdered people? This gun is, we're going to still accept it. Give you $200. We won't call you back in. We won't arrest you. Can we trust that? Should we trust that? The answer should be an overwhelming and a resounding hell no. Even if they mean it, we shouldn't trust it. It would be healthy not to believe that, right? Okay, that's one question the leaders of the community should ask. Can we trust the police? Secondly, how does it benefit or hurt us to give all of our guns back to the police department? Not only are you giving your guns back, but listen carefully. Who are you giving your guns to? Are you giving your guns to the church? Nope. And because that white boy, I think in North Carolina, went and killed those innocent 10 people, those black people praying in that church, it means that churches are not even off limits to racists. They'll come up in your church service and kill you. So churches probably need protection too. But you're not returning your gun to your church. You're not returning your gun. They don't say you take your gun to New Black Panther Party, take a gun to Anubis Militia, take a gun to the Elmer Geronimo Pratt Gun Club, the Huey P. Newton Gun Club, that are set up to protect the black community. They say you can take your gun to the police department. Come on, family. You should be able to say, who benefits from that? Well, let's look at it. How do we benefit? Each person that returns their guns gets $200. Okay. How do police benefit? They get to disarm your community, but make it look like they're helping your community. Because what they say on the flyer is, we're trying to reduce gun violence in the neighborhood. Well, do we need to reduce gun violence amongst ourselves? Yes. Do we participate in fratricide, the killing of our brother or sister? Yes. Do we want to see that go? Yes. But the answer may not be get rid of our guns, because then we won't have any protection when, let's say, police come to do harm or do that, to mistreat us, or do their mischievousness. There's other ways we deal with the gun violence in our community, but in terms of police, maybe we should not be giving up our guns. Maybe that may be one of the few things that stop them from running up in our buildings and houses right this second, because they know that we have means to protect ourselves, right? So when you do that type of intelligent, rational analysis, now you may come to the conclusion, congregation, we've decided to terminate that agreement with the police. We're not going to allow them in our church to desecrate this holy place with their dirty, rotten, unethical asses. They're not coming in the house of the Lord. Please. And we're not going to facilitate any imbalanced arrangement where our people in our congregation and community are voluntarily giving away their protection to the people who are their number one source of death outside of us, unfortunately. So when you do the analysis, you say that's not a good practice. That's not a good idea for these reasons. You don't just say it. You give these very intelligent, reasons. Y'all want money? There's other ways to get $200, black people. Let's use our ingenuity and our intelligence and creativity to get money. But that way of getting money sets our people up to be even more vulnerable, sitting ducks. So when these people come running in your house, you just sitting there with your Bible, your Quran, and your prayer and your meditation book, but no weapon to deter them. Which, by the way, the Second Amendment of your supposed Constitution gives you the right to have. Okay? That's an example of how you use an idea being introduced to you to ask, is this good for us? Intelligently, not emotionally. Right? Okay. Give another example, then we're going to end. Second example. You notice that there's a brother or a sister in the community that's advocating that we identify ourselves not as new Africans, that we have no connection to Africa. The people in Africa are completely different from us. We're the descendants of American slaves, and we're separate and distinct, and which is in some degrees true. We had a different historical experience, and that kind of made us a little different than, let's say, continental Africans who had a different, more of a colonial experience, right? So there's differences that account for what? Our different diets, the different food we cook and eat, uh, the different types of levels of education we got, the way we speak, all of that. Our names, the way we dress, all of that is a result of our acculturation to being Africans that were brought against our will to the United States and us acculturating to the culture here. So we are definitely we have been westernized, and none of us can disagree with that. I don't care if you piss black and you bleed black, you still have westernized traits and westernized thinking because this is all we know. And that's going to make you kind of different from our people on the motherland. But now ask yourself, when people say we're not fighting for Africa, we don't recognize ourselves as Africans, we don't connect with Africa, we don't see no diaspora, we just see the people that we identify with, and the people we fight for are American black people whose grandparents all were born on southern plantations who were enslaved. And that's the only people we're fighting for in terms of general protection, in terms of reparations and political empowerment. Now, they make a few good points that are true or have kernels of truth, but should we support that idea? Should we say, yeah, I'm an American descendant of slaves, I'm down with ADOS, and I don't rock with the Africans. I don't see a connection between me and the Africans, Uruguay, Nicaragua, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, and parts of Asia, and no, we see no connection. Is that wise? What questions would you ask? What do you lose when you take the ADOS position? Well, you're going to lose millions and millions and millions of people and supporters and alliance members all over the world that outnumber white people probably 10, 20 to 1 in terms of melanated people, black and brown people all over the world, right? You miss the ability in those alliances to get resources that you don't have that they do, and to kind of make these sort of transactions where they get something they need from us and we get something we need from them, and we have these mutually beneficial relationships and information, and thus we're more empowered. That goes out the window because you don't connect yourself with them. We miss the ability to have access to land. God knows Africa has plenty of land. South America has plenty of land. And places in Asia have plenty of land, and they got people there who identify themselves with us, who identify a common struggle with us, right? Who are willing to share resources with us, unbeknownst to most of us, right? That's what you give up when you take the ADOS, oh, we're not connected with them, right? And whether you connect yourself with them or not, you and them are going to keep getting hell, receiving hell from the descendants of white slave masters. Now, I want to be clear. The people that colonized Africa, the motherland, were these different European countries, France, Portugal, Spain, Britain, right? To a smaller degree, Germany and others, France. So those people did not necessarily colonize America, but they colonized Africa. The people responsible for our enslavement in the United States are the British, largely, and their offspring, because the white people that own plantations generally started as colonists from Britain. And you had some poor whites that were Irish who were often overseas on those plantations, but those are the descendants of British people. So, yes, there's some difference, but they're all European. That's a fact, or European descended people. So here you go. Oh, I'm ADOS. You jumping on that bandwagon. We're going to get reparations. Yeah, but your numbers are small. Well, how many people we got in the United States that are so-called Black Americans? 55 million that we know about? When you could have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of people that identify as African descended all over the world, you just cut your legs out from under you. You get all those numbers are gone because you refuse to identify with our people. Gone. This is another example of maybe that's not a good idea. Oh, somebody comes to the community, they hardcore nationalists. They pro-black. They hard. They like Malcolm. They bringing it hard like Garvey. And what they saying is, I see the Queen Bee, she's giving some very good advice and suggestions. Anyone on practice that threatens our ability to connect, build, and love our people are the enemy. Absolutely. And that's exactly what we're saying. And furthermore, that anything coming from those people as suggestions to us probably should be rejected. Let's say you got a black man, black woman heads an organization, and what they're saying is, we can't trust this white man. This white man is responsible for our death, disease, and destruction. All of which I agree with 1,000,000,000%. Because it's true. And then they say, as a result, I want you to take your black children out the white man's schools immediately. All of you that's working a job and your supervisor is white and the owner of that place, that establishment where you work is white, I want you to quit your job immediately. Matter of fact, since the white man's face, his dead president is on our money, I want you to burn all your money immediately. And since most of the clothes you own in some way come from white people and the appliances you get, those that aren't Asian, of course, I want you to throw those away immediately. And because the building you live in is most likely owned by some white person or whatever, I want you to take all your stuff and leave the building and live on the street immediately. Does that sound kosher to you? Does that make sense? You would say no. I'm giving you an extreme situation so you get my point. Because you would realize if we follow that policy, we're going to be naked, raggedy, outdoors, and without any sustenance, income, food, housing, clothing. That's going to make us more vulnerable, more impoverished, closer to being killed and wiped off the face of the earth. So you would out of pocket, and you certainly ain't giving your money up. I don't care what they could have Donald Trump on $100 bills. Black people ain't gonna be burning no bills because they got Donald Trump on it. We're not dumb like that, right? We know we're colonized, and there's some things we don't like that we're gonna have to put up with as we think of other ways to get out of this situation we're in. I think we're smart enough to know that. But yet there are people who advocate ideas close to that. They'll say, you go to the white man's school? That's the white man's college. Oh no, that's not good. Well, we gotta go to the black college. Well, wait a minute. Then when you do the research, you find out who started the black colleges, the Freedmen's Bureau. Most of them. The Freedmen's Bureau was made up of white people during the Reconstruction after the Civil War. And they were supposed to be more liberal whites, more accommodating whites who believed in the equality of blacks and whites and maybe didn't support enslavement, but still saw themselves as superior to us They built most of those black schools, family. We need to be clear, and funded them. And even the ones that exist today that were started by black people, most of their money is coming from white people. Black alums of black colleges who know will tell you that they're struggling, these black colleges, because black alums are not giving enough money back. So if you saw the movie School Days, they show you this. Spike Lee's brilliant movie. Is a black man, a student named Dap, who's an activist, and they're at a mythical college that's supposed to be based on Morehouse, where Spike went to school, but Morehouse would not give him permission to film on campus. Wise for them, because he was being critical of them. And he's showing how this black student's having these protests, the black administrators keep calling him in the office and say, yo, what are you doing? He's like, this is not fair. Apartheid in South Africa. He's like, listen, we don't care. You got to stop this because you're going to mess up our what? White support. Meaning, if you keep banging on South Africa, which these white people supported back then they're going to stop giving our college money. And if they stop giving our college money, you won't be able to be it. So we need to be clear. Everything in this country partially belongs to this country. The government has some level of say because you're in their country. We need to be real clear. We're kind of colonized here. So you want to start a nice nonprofit. Guess who you go to? Guess where that paperwork goes? Attorney generals and secretary of state and all. These are all government officials. Who do you pay taxes to? The Internal Revenue Service. That's a government agency, right? When you buy these things, you're registering with government agencies and agents because this is their house. That's like somebody comes to your house to stay. You're gonna have rules. They can't just come and do whatever they want. You get to decide. I know you want to have a big party in here with weed and coke, but we don't do that here. So you lay down the laws. You're the government. So yeah, even though they're in your house, they don't have a complete run of your house, right? It's the same thing with the government. It's the same thing, right? So we have to be, as Malcolm said, politically mature. When people come to us with these different ideas, whether they're black, white, or whatever they are, we got to take them through these questions. And to summarize the question, look at it this way. If you determine that this is something that's going to cause division, that's going to lose you money, that's going to waste your time, that's going to have you infighting, that's going to put you in a vulnerable state, an impoverished state, then you should reject it. And if you listen to some of these YouTube pundits and Facebook people and government officials and politicians, some of what they're advocating means death for black people. Absolutely. Absolute death. You come to some person, he's supposed to be, or she's nationalist, they telling you, oh, reading isn't important, studying isn't important, saving your money isn't important, working hard isn't important, budgeting your time isn't important. Be late. Don't worry about it. That's the white man's time. We go by sun time because we Africans. Let's see what jobs you're gonna keep, what relationships you're gonna have, what alliances you're gonna build when you're consistently late. You don't have to tell people right and exact facts. Tell them whatever you want to convince them. Let's see how long those relationships last and those alliances last when people find out you're pathologically lying to them and misleading them. You don't have to have protocol for emergencies. You don't have to have protocol for security. Do what you want. Let's see how long your school lasts when there's fires and you haven't practiced fire drills and everybody's running out. There's no designated staircases and places to go, and people are dying unnecessarily and preventably because no one thought to say, in the case of emergency, we're going to practice for that so we have an orderly and organized way of proceeding. Protocol. Because there's no protocol, because that's people, I don't want protocol. I want to do what I want. Hundreds of people die that didn't have to die. Let's see how long a society lasts with no protocol. How long a relationship, a household, an organization, a community like no protocol. People can come in our neighborhood that are outsiders. They can mistreat our sisters, our elders, our kids. They could overcharge us, and we just keep going back, keep going back. Nobody says nothing. So what do those outsiders learn? You can do what you want here. They don't care. And they still keep giving us, they'll still keep buying products from our store. How does that help your community or hurt? They'll go up in price, they'll go down in quality, they'll mistreat you, talk about you behind your back or in your face, be inappropriate with your community members, knowing that you're still going to go back. So we have to, on a very simple level, just ask yourself, what's the cost benefit analysis? How much will this take from us? How much will this give to us? And if that doesn't add up, if you find that this policy is going to hurt us, so I'm coming out telling you, bang on these black women. Black women are the reason why our kids are messed up. Black women are the reason why relationships don't work. Black women are the reason why George Bush was elected. Black women are the reason why Kennedy was killed. Black women are the reason. You got to ask yourself, if the majority of our population feels discouraged, depressed, unwanted, devalued, hated on by us, what will that mean for future relationships? What will that mean for strong families? What will that mean for united communities? Well, what will our future be? So unless you're a man that's that likes to be with other men, or you just hate women that much, that policy makes no sense. You have to find ways to disagree maturely, right? And find ways to be accurate in your analysis, not paint with these broad strokes. And that goes for women too. It's the same for women. You know, family, I've never had a video that we put up to YouTube, our YouTube channel, that's so controversial as the video that I just did, Stop Blaming and Shaming Black Women. Oh, every other day I got the posts from men. We'll stop doing it when they stop doing it. What? You a grown man? That's how you process stuff? Like a child would? Well, they do stuff too. Like, is that how we looking at this? Is that how we're going to proceed? Because I tell you, if that's how we internalize that issue, and if our first instinct is to get defensive and to justify a bad policy, that's a bad policy. Then I can tell you predictably we're gonna have trouble, because before the white man can destroy us, we be done shot, killed, stabbed each other, abandon each other, and leave each other more vulnerable. Whenever there's a new African in this country and he or she is alone and isolated and ostracized, got nobody to stand with them, nobody to speak for them, nobody to protect them, we fail. We made that brother or sister easy pickings for white supremacists, for slumlords of these buildings, for racist police. They're easy pickings. They have no protection. And those type of policies will lead to black men and women being isolated, ostracized, and constantly contentious and constantly antagonistic with each other, and can't build them. When you're always arguing, and nobody's going to say, you know what, I'll take a step back. I'll listen. I won't say nothing. I want to listen to you. And I'll take note of what you say, and I'll try to move. Then it'll never get resolved. So who suffers? Our children. The Ghanaians say wisely, when elephants fight, the grass gets crushed. That's powerful. It say when the big dogs, when the so-called leaders, parents, the teachers, the clergy, whoever you are, when we're fighting each other, we get hurt, but those underneath us that rely on us get hurt even more. Our kids, our dependents, because they're seeing the people that should be loving on each other, even after they fight, come back together, they're seeing them fail them. If an ideal or practice harms us, out of GP, we gotta dismiss it and reject it. Dismiss it and reject it. We say, look, if you sell some dope, some of this dope we got, the government comes to let's sell some dope. You black people seem to be a little bit too highly energized, oversexed, whatever the problem is they cite. And this drug we're giving you for free, mind you, will get your community right. Would you believe that? Would you trust government agencies? And the police are going to hand out this drug to y'all free. Would you trust that based on what you know of the history of how they've used drugs to subjugate our people? Would you trust that? So outright, you should say, hell no, that's going to mess us up. We're going to be dope. We don't know if the effects of that drug are what they're telling us. We can't trust them. And we don't have laboratories of experts who can break down the drug and tell us what it does. We don't know what's in this thing that they give. And they're giving it to us for free. Isn't that how they used the Opium War to subdue China? Because China was homogeneous. They didn't let outsiders in. They wasn't letting the white man come in. So how did the white man get in? Got them addicted to drugs. It made them come to them for the drugs. And that's how they got it. That's how they've used drugs. So these are things you got to know through political education, whatever. I'm going to end here. Family, don't be anyone's fool. Don't be anyone's lapdog. Don't trust somebody just because of their skin color or their dashiki or their suit. Analyze everything. Ask those critical questions. Will this hurt us or harm us? Will this advance us or set us behind? Will this enrich our community or further impoverish it? Will this help our community come together or divide it? Will this create resolution or contention? Right? And sometimes those questions won't be easy to ask, and sometimes they'll be very easy to ask, but you gotta ask those questions before you jump on somebody's bandwagon or find yourself promoting some crazy idea that sets your people 100 years backwards. With that said, family, I want to thank you for listening. Thank you for joining us. Have a beautiful weekend, and we will see you soon. Peace and Black Power. Thank you for joining us.